Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guests are clarinetist Peter Cigleris, conductor László Marosi, and composer Simon Milton. Their new album on SOMM Recordings, Clarinet Concertos, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Peter.
Hello. Hi.
Peter, so tell us what first drew you to the clarinet.
Well, when I was very young, probably around 9 years old, I actually started playing the cello because music lessons were offered in the school I was in at the time, and I didn't get on with the teacher. I didn't particularly like them very much. And then we moved down to the southwest of England to Plymouth. And I went into secondary school and had a very good music program to the point that for the first 2 terms of the first year, everybody was basically, it was a whole class sort of violin. So we were all there for violin. And then those that showed some aptitude were, at the end of that particular course, were allowed to choose another instrument. So, and it's rather embarrassing to say this now, but I actually asked for the flute. And the head of music, director of music, said, well, we don't have any spaces left on the flute, so here's the clarinet, the next best thing. And that was that, really. I was like a duck to water, and I progressed very quickly on the instrument. So nothing particularly drew me towards it. In a way, it was a sort of maybe, a product of circumstance and probably a little bit of fate as well, perhaps. And yeah, I just sort of fell in love with the instrument there and then.
Tell us about the moment when you realized you were going to be a professional clarinetist.
So I was very lucky at the time. The Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra would come down to Plymouth and do concerts, and I remember going. So the head of music would take us to these concerts, and I remember going to one, and I think they were doing a Sibelius cycle, but I distinctly remember the concert where the sort of penny dropped for me, and they did Sibelius' Fourth Symphony and the Second Symphony, and as soon as I heard the opening of the second, I just knew exactly I want to do that. And that was that. And yeah, how do I go about doing that? And so yeah, that was the sort of the inspiration. Sibelius' Second Symphony, I suppose.
Let's listen to our next track. This is the first movement of the concerto by Simon Milton. Welcome, Simon.
Hello.
Simon, so tell us a little bit about how you first became interested in the clarinet. And I imagine all of your friends have come up to you and asked you, whoever plays an instrument, write a concerto for my instrument. Why did you choose to write one for the clarinet?
Well, I've got a similar story to Peter in the sense that my secondary school had a music program, and I learned the clarinet. I was already having piano lessons at that stage, and to be honest with you, the clarinet was easier because you only had to worry about one line of music, is read one stave at a time, and um, yeah, and I was very lucky to study with some great clarinetists, Robert Klein, and then Mark van der Weel as well, and then Michael Collins. I was had some private lessons with him, then worked with him quite a lot on arrangements, transcriptions, and he premiered my first clarinet concerto, which was for clarinet and string orchestra. And having that kind of sound and working with somebody who can do anything on the instrument led me to write another one for him. And then he, I actually, I think Peter, I put up this post on Facebook. I've written clarinet sonata. Who wants to play it? Peter said yes,
Mm.
and he did in Bristol. And I was I was quite taken aback by his playing. It's the sound quality. And I think it was only a couple of years later, I just thought, let's write him a concerto. I haven't done one for wind band yet. My first ever piece for wind band, and it just went from there. The clarinet can literally do anything. It's got for me, the most varied range of tonal colours and the biggest dynamic range and actual range of notes. It's just the most versatile for me, and I am biased because I play it.
And Simon, did you have a moment when you were working with Peter? Because we hear all these different sounds, all this Peter can do all these amazing things.
Yeah.
Was there a particular moment when he inspired you when you thought, wow, I didn't expect that?
I knew that he could do the pyrotechnics. That's if you're going to come out of a top London music college, we expect you to be able to do the technical stuff. You can play your Limburg concertos and your Copelands and what have you, and that's fine. It's the quiet stuff. There was some beautiful quiet music that I wrote in that sonata, and he captured the sound there. The sensitivity, that was the exciting bit for me.
Let's have a listen to the second movement of Simon's concerto. Wow. So welcome, László.
Thank you.
László, so you are the authority on the contemporary wind band. Tell us what makes this album special.
Well, the number one, we needed to work on that almost a decade, right, Peter, to make it happen. Because we were working and teaching in a summer camps in England, and probably it was 10 years ago when I came up with the, hey, why don't we played a solo with Peter, and different piece than what is recorded in this CD. And I came up with the idea, why don't we make a recording? And we started to work on it, several other options, and we ended up here in Hungary with this wonderful band that you can see on the picture. My friend, the president of the Hungarian Wind Band Association, he is the conductor, and his band that you can see on the picture, and they were very happy, very excited to do that. What makes interesting for me this four band piece? This was your question, right? The four pieces are totally different. Totally different the music concepts, totally different composition concepts, totally different band concepts, and totally different clarinet concepts. And this makes it extremely colorful, very well balanced. The Hidas it's a beautiful, because Hidas can't write ugly music. He just writes beautiful music in a traditional way. It is traditional and contemporary in an aesthetically pleasing, high attraction way. Simon's piece is very exciting because it's also very traditional. You heard the waltz there, and you hear the Baroque fugue, and all in the 21st century's musical vocabulary, that the two, the 300 years music history are combined together, that you say, wow, it doesn't sound Baroque, it doesn't sound 19th century, but it sounds great music from the 21st century that is expressive. And the audience is not running out of the room with inferiority complex and several the contemporary music concepts. No, it's a meaningful, beautiful 21st century music. The third one that you just took up from the screen, also the Maslanka, is a very popular concerto, especially in the United States and in Australia, and probably in some places in West Europe too. And the Japanese piece, the Yagisaba, very virtuosic, very entertaining, but it's easier for the band than for the soloist. He even said, oh, the band is grade 4, but the soloist is grade 5. You need a really good clarinetist for that. And we are very lucky that we have Peter for that. And he took the challenge and he learned the 4 pieces, and he did a fantastic, great job. So I suggest everyone who is interested in music and clarinet and concertos, buy and listen to this CD. You will love each moment, all the 4 composers, and number 1 Peter, and Simon's great piece. So this is, you can hear from my words that I'm very excited still doing this, all the conducting for 45 years, and I do same with the symphony orchestra and the wind band, and I believe that wind band is the 21st century's creative instrumental offering from music, because of the developed new total families of instruments. Why the strings were the first wholly grew, developed the instrument of families covering the same range as the human voice, from the soprano till the bass. In the wind band, we have much more than that. We have the inter-flute family, the inter-clarinet family, inter-saxophone family, the inter-brass family, the inter-melods family, lots of colors. So please, best composers, come and get attracted to wind band and write more and more music, such as Simon does, who is working now on a concerto. I can't wait to listen to it and read it and learn it.
Okay, let's have a listen to the next concerto then. This is the Maslanka. Okay, this brings us to our philosophical part of our conversation. According to the liner notes, quote, the concerto for solo wind instrument, whether accompanied by a symphonic orchestra of the typical size for the period, an orchestra consisting solely of strings, or one made up entirely of wind instruments, the latter usually referred to as a band or occasionally wind band, has roots in musical history going just as far back as works for string orchestra or the evolving symphony orchestra. Yet we hear the wind concerto repertoire far less frequently, even though the solo instrument projects wonderfully in a concert hall, and the aesthetic qualities of many of these works and of the instruments for which they are composed are deserving of far greater exposure. End quote. Starting with Simon, then Laszlo, then Peter. What do you think? Why do you think we hear the wind concerto repertoire far less frequently? What is it that you love most about wind instruments?
I mean, for me, it's about timing and fashion. You know, if the clarinet had maybe been developed 10, 15 years earlier, Mozart would have given us more clarinet concertos. He only gave us one. And we could have had more repertoire from him. And Weber's gone out of fashion, Crusel's gone out of fashion, Schwar's gone out of fashion in the concert hall. And if Mendelssohn had written a clarinet concerto or Brahms had met Mühlfeld earlier, he might have given us a concerto, which would be performed because Brahms is very much in fashion, you know. And I really think it's the timing of when the composers have met people and who's fashionable in the concert hall now.
Laszlo?
Why band? Well, the band is behind with the concert repertoire than with the symphony orchestra. With symphony orchestra, we have centuries of repertoire that people can choose from and perform, but concert wind band, basically, before the beginning of the 20th century, they didn't write concert music for the wind band. Military marches played for parades, and battlefield communication. Poor musicians, can you believe that? Between the bullets, they were staying there and playing, and it was very dangerous to play in the band at that time. Now it's not that dangerous. The function of the open airness, like Berlioz was thinking about what to write when the French government asked him for the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution, 1789, so 1889, to write a celebration piece and the Grand Symphony. He chose the wind band as a medium because it can be played outside without electric sound amplification. Huge crowds can listen to that, and people started to follow that. Why don't we do that? And after we got the horse suites that we consider as the first concert pieces, and also in Hungary we have from the beginning of 20th century for military conductors pieces that the Clement Verlag published. So why? Because it's behind of 200 years and gives a possibility for composers for creative work, not to compete with Beethoven in the wind band, because Beethoven didn't write, but it's not true. He wrote wind band pieces, but smaller, the wind ensembles. Now we have much more instruments, much more wider colorfulness of the instruments, like the saxophone. It very few people are thinking about why do we have the saxophone? Because Adolf Sachs was playing in a symphony orchestra and he didn't like the sound between the string family and the wind band who is sitting behind the string family. He said, I have to come up with an instrument that will help to melt these two totally different musical mediums together. And this is how we got the saxophone. And now in the symphony orchestra, very few composer uses the saxophone, but the wind band uses it because it's a very colorful, very rich sound instrument, and all the others I mentioned earlier, the big developed families of instruments that we have there create a color orgy. You can choose from colors and combine so many different ways that people can't stop to listen to it, and composers can't stop to write new and new pieces for the medium.
Peter, is that you agree with all that? It's maybe the clarinet makers could have done some better networking with the great composers. The great composers could have opened their minds a little bit more.
Potentially. I think I kind of agree with Simon a little bit that it's probably a lot of it is down to fashion and down to performers as well. I mean, if you go back, there's always been a virtuoso performer connected to a famous clarinet concerto. So if we go back to Mozart, we've got Anton Stadler, we got Heinrich Behrman for the Webers, Croussel wrote his own concertos, Simon Hermannstadt for Spohr, and then of course Richard Bulfeld for the Brahms works, and I mean in the UK, Frederick Thurston, works by Ireland, Malcolm Arnold, Finzi. So I mean it's probably a whole combination of things. I also believe that promoters prefer to program piano and string concertos because they put more bums on seats, for want of a better expression. And unless you've got a clarinet player that's got absolute superstardom, then it's going to be very difficult. It's a very difficult sell. And then when you do have a promoter that says, okay, yeah, let's take the risk, let's take the chance, it's invariably going to be Mozart. And there's so much other repertoire, and that's kind of one of the things that we sort of aim to do with this disc, is just to highlight the different repertoire that there is, and just to kind of sort of open the box and kind of maybe search a bit deeper and see what there is. So I mean, again, I think it's probably very much a kind of circumstantial. Also, there's possibly a little bit of ignorance on part of concert promoters, and also performers as well. I think your other question was, what is it you love about wind instruments? Well, I mean, I can only speak as a clarinet player. But I mean, the clarinet is extremely versatile. I mean, Simon touched on this earlier. That it's a very versatile instrument. It's a very expressive instrument, and has a very wide range of colors, and a very wide range of tonal palettes. And I mean, I think all wind instruments have that, actually. I mean, László very enthusiastically described, the sound of the saxophone and how that blends beautifully into a wind ensemble setting. I mean, actually, in an orchestra as well, it blends really, really nice. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot, but the saxophone solo from Bizet's La Lysiane, or the saxophone solo in the Ravel orchestration of Mussorgsky's Pictures and Exhibition are two perfect examples of how beautifully the saxophone can be integrated into the symphony orchestra. And of course, there are other works, Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet, for example, and even Vaughan Williams' Fifth Symphony with the tenor saxophone part, which is, I mean, Vaughan Williams was a master orchestrator, and so the tenor saxophone just blends beautifully in that symphony. So I think woodwind instruments. It's the colors and it's the harmonics that they create, and especially when they come together, it adds a real sparkle to the sound. You can hear that in a wind ensemble, wind band, wind harmony, and even a wind section of a symphony orchestra. I mean, I think in a wind section of a symphony orchestra, the woodwinds add the color at the top of the sound. If you see that in terms of the orchestration, and I think the same thing in a wind band. That I mean, perhaps László might be able to expand a bit, but I've always felt that that the the trumpets, the trombones, the brass, and the horns, etc. Kind of they're the foundation, and then the woodwinds kind of add that sparkle on top, as well as sharing the responsibilities of melody and also counterpoint, etc., etc.
Okay. I'd like us to now to listen to our last selection. This is the concerto by Yagasawa. Wonderful. I will let everyone purchase the album to finish the rest of that fantastic performance. So final question, first to László, then Simon, and then Peter. What do you wish everyone who listens to this album, what would you like us all to take away from listening to it?
Invite Peter to play the solo with their band and ask Simon to compose new pieces for wind band. I can wish that for everyone and love this medium and work for it. And as this is the final question, I would love to use that moment to say thanks for the Győr Symphonic Band, who was willing to sacrifice their fall break for this recording, working very hard. It was a 3 days project. I haven't even met with them earlier on that year. And just the funny story, we had a problem with the contrabassoon for Simon's piece. The person who was supposed to play it suddenly got very sick and got in a hospital, so we didn't know what to do. And I remember that there is a wonderful bassoon player in the local symphony orchestra, and I knew him, so we gave him a call Sunday morning. Could you come to play the contrabassoon in a recording of Simon's piece? And he said, oh, yeah, why not? When it is? 30 minutes from now, he was still in bed and said, but I don't even have a contrabassoon. So he was running to pick up a contrabassoon, and half an hour later, he was sitting there and he played the piece and we made the recording. So Ferenc Szabó, the conductor and president of the Hungarian Wind Band Union, was also a very important part of that. So I wish for everyone to love band music and learn to listen to quality. Because if you listen to this CD, you will learn what quality is. And both the compositions and the performance will bring you a very exciting, high aesthetic experience. Enjoy.
Simon?
My other role, as well as being a composer, I'm a psychotherapist. And I suppose what I always want people to take away from my music is some time to reflect on what it brings up for them. You know, explore that, because I've given space.
Okay, Peter?
Well, I mean, I would say to appreciate the wind band more, and as a medium, it is a bona fide medium, really, and you know, and hoping that it will inspire composers to write for that medium more, whether they be concert works or concertos, whatever, doesn't really matter. But I think, but also also to be more open about the different repertoire that is out there. I think we have a very limited knowledge is probably the wrong word, but a very limited idea about what should be programmed. And I think the one thing for me, if people take away, is that actually these are four very diverse works, and all have their musical language, which is kind of common because of the genre that we're writing for, that's been written for the wind band. But they're all very different in exciting ways. And I suppose also clarinet players to go and explore this repertoire and go and perform it and just get it out there more, I think.
Okay, let's see how we can buy the album. It's easy enough. It's at SOMM-recordings.com. That's SOMM-recordings.com. And I think we can just put in Peter if we want. And then it should come right up. Almost. There it is. And so it's easy to buy. It says between £6 and £14. And I think you can also listen to it here on the website. So again, that's SOMM-recordings.com, SOMMRecordings.com. Thank you so very much to Peter Cigleris, Simon Milton, and László Marosi.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
So before we go, I'd just like us to take a look at Vienna Live's website. That's www.simeonmora.com, where you can find out about all upcoming episodes. And please, if you're so inclined, take a look, click on Become a Sponsor. And we have several sponsorship packages. One is $5 a month, and it includes one Vienna Live Celebrates 5 Years mug. For $10 monthly, you receive one Vienna Live Celebrates 5 Years mug and one Vienna Live City Tote. You can also click on under custom one-time payment, and you can sponsor Vienna Live for however much you like. All of our individual and corporate sponsors allow Vienna Live to continue to provide a free public service. Thank you very much for your consideration. And on November 5th, so there's no show next week. We'll start again on December 5th. We have J.A.C. Redford, Love Bade Me Welcome. Love Bade Me Welcome is the forthcoming collection of choral music from composer J.A.C. Redford, exploring spirituality, love, and the human experience, blending traditional forms with contemporary harmonies and time-honored texts. Redford sets the poetry of Shakespeare, Gerald Manley Hopkins, George Herbert, and more. By employing distinctive gestures and a range of vocal timbres, the composer offers sensitive musical interpretations of each poem, from the serene resonance of the singing bull to Old Testament drama of who hears the ocean roaring in a tree. In giving voice to these humanistic texts, Love Bade Me Welcome is a compelling invitation to self-reflection. Once again, that's in 2 weeks, November 5th, J.A.C. Redford, Love Bade Me Welcome. All information about upcoming shows may be found at www.simeonmora.com. Again, thank you so very much to Peter Cigleris, to László Marosi, and to Simon Milton. Thank you to Vienna Live's corporate and individual sponsors. Your ongoing support allows Vienna Live to operate as a free music public service. Thanks very much to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Of course, most of all, thanks to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile. From London and Cornwall, England, Washington, D.C., and Orlando, Florida, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
See you. Bye.